Okay, this is part two of the conspiracy of the Titanic. So getting back to it, I was just explaining how the first class passengers on this ship, some of those people, and most importantly, is Jacob Astor and his new wife, the Strausses, who are buried here. They're the owners of Macy's, the Strausses. So Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade. Then you have Guggenheim, founder of the museum, right? Because like I just said, they're over in Europe. They're buying up all this artwork. They got to build these incredible museums for all their new artwork to go in. So they're coming home, and at the highest levels, even though they're all working towards the goal of making money, it's just like everything in life. There's cliques, there's groups, there's friends, there's socialites. And certain people don't like each other, and certain people, their business interests align perfectly, and other people are in opposition to them advancing higher. So the owner of the Titanic, who owned the White Star Line, was J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan is the guy, his group of friends are the ones that caused the stock market crash, okay? 1920s, almost 1930. Excuse me. And in a lot of the older history, they portray him as saving the world, right? Because him and his friends got together out of the greatness of their heart, took their personal money, bought up these banks because they just loved humanity. But in truth, these people are the worst fucking humans on the planet, okay? Like, they're involved in slavery, right? Like, you got slavery going on all over the world for these people working in terrible conditions here in the city, just the most despicable people on the planet, and they're always angling for more money and power. That's all they care about. They have no human empathy for the people that they're stepping on to get this money. So JP Morgan is the owner of the White Star Line that owns the Titanic. He owns the Titanic, Britannia, and the Olympia, okay? And one of the conspiracies was that there had been an explosive charge or a torpedo had sunk the Titanic, but we know that isn't right because, now we've been able to get submersibles down there and look at the wreckage and how it occurred, and you can tell by the damage that it was not an explosive, because I was in the military, there are very telltale signs of that kind of damage being done to like metals and, even the ground, right? We have assessments that we do on explosive devices, and, we have to take reports. So it's very clear to anybody that has any kind of like experience with this kind of stuff. You can see the hull, that wasn't due to an explosive charge. So we could rule that out, right? At least in my mind. The other theory is that one of the chambers that held coal in the Titanic, because it was coal-powered steam engine, one of the bins with the coal had a fire going on inside it, right? And the only way to get all the coal out was to shovel it out by hand. And they only found out a day or two before the initial launch of the ship. And the departure of this cruise liner was, the biggest news in the world. It was like the biggest movie premiere, the biggest event that you could possibly be at, because it was the most magnificent ship ever built. Like it would be like the creation of the moon landing for these people. Like, it was just huge technological advance. Like, you're living in the day of horse and buggy, and they're transferring out of that into like the modern industrial age where you have electricity, lights, you have the creation of the beginnings of like refrigeration, indoor heating, all of that, right? So all of that's going on, and everybody wants to be on this new cruise ship. But who wants to be on it the most? The upper class, because it's like got the best accommodations in the world, the most advanced, everything you could want, luxury. And you're going to come from Europe, and you're going to sail all the way back to America, and all of your artwork that you bought is being shipped on another ship. That alone is just like a whole entire cargo ship, right? So they're coming back in luxury on this liner, and owned by J.P. Morgan. So you have two sides to the banking system. Okay, if you know nothing about finance, at this time were backed, the US dollar is backed by gold and silver. Okay? You could go to any bank, you could take a $1 note, go in, give it to the teller, and they would give you silver or gold in the value of $1. The people who created the central banking system, people like Alexander Hamilton, it started with him, the initial, the creation of the Federal Reserve that we now use for our monetary policy, monetary creation of debt, etc. It started in Hamilton's time, and it was like a slow, it's like anything in politics, right? That's a big deal where you have all these sides fighting. It's like a slow incrementation of that policy. It never is like one thing that upturns the apple cart where we it's where everybody can see what's going on. It's the similar, the frog in the boiling pot theory. You put a frog in a pot, and you slowly turn up the heat until he dies. So he's not going to jump out of the pot, right? So that's what they do with the population. So you had J.P. Morgan, who was a banker, and his people on his side and big in the stock market. And what do they want? They want to create a Federal Reserve. And what is the Federal Reserve? It is a private banking institution. There is nothing federal or government about it other than the word federal in the name of it, okay? So when you see on your dollar, you take it out, U.S. Federal Reserve, it doesn't mean shit about the government. It's just the banking, a private banker puts that on there so you think in your mind, oh, it's the government. And why are they doing that? Well, because if you could buy a $200 million building or a piece of property and you had $500 million in the bank, but you owned a bank that could print money, okay, would you take $200 million of cash out of your savings account to buy that property? Or would you just go to the computer and add $200 million to your checking account and then buy it? That's what they're doing, okay? That's why we have a $30 trillion deficit, and none of it gets spent on the people. Look at the roads, the homeless, the lack of education. I mean, I could go on and on about just about that, but $30 trillion in debt. We don't own a goddamn thing in country. Everywhere you go in Manhattan, Bronx, it's fucking, the infrastructure's falling apart, okay? That's the side that J.P. Morgan is on. The creation of this banking system that he is going to control with his people and get to print money whenever he wants to buy something new. And on the other side, you have the Strausses, the Astors, and Guggenheim. Now, Strauss became a congressman, okay? They were for sound money. Sound money is a currency backed by gold or silver. So for every dollar that you have to have an equal amount of silver or gold, because you have to have 100% backed reserve for the currency. Unlike the current dollar where there's no backing, it's just it's toilet paper that you believe is worth something, okay? So they believe in sound money. And who controls sound money? The founders of this country, okay? Washington, Jefferson, all of these people, they understood what a Federal Reserve Bank was. Even though that was 300 years ago, they saw what it did in Europe when you had the groups, banking people like the Rothschilds who would go to the Germans, egg them on to start a war with the French, and then you had them giving loans. So they're giving loans to both sides, okay? They're making money on both sides. It doesn't matter who wins, because if you're the losing side and you can't pay your bill, they come in and take all your property. If you're the winning side, hey, you're paying back all of the money you owe us plus interest. Like win-win in all directions, right? They saw that the amount of warfare that had caused over in Europe over almost its 2,000-year history, right? So the signers of the Declaration and really the Constitution, when they created the U.S. Constitution, okay, I'm going to have to stop here because once again, these are deep topics that I can't just explain in 2 minutes, and which is why most Americans have no idea about what I'm saying, is because it requires more thinking than they want to do.